I got bored one day and decided to drop the Klipsch Reference Premiere 280F tower speakers from the living room into the primary listening room. The dedicated space I use for listening to music is driven by the Philharmonic BMR Tower speakers. I wondered what the two would sound like compared side by side in a non-scientific, ears-only showdown. Could the $800 pair of Klipsch towers be any match for the nearly $4,000 pair of Philharmonic BMR towers? After I briefly go over the specs of these towers, we'll find that out. The Philharmonic Audio BMR Tower is a mass-loaded transmission line cabinet with an 8-inch woofer, 2 balanced mode radiators in an MTM configuration to provide increased clarity in the lower treble and upper mid-range, a ribbon tweeter, and front-facing port. The specs for this tower claims that the bass has a tuning frequency of about 22 Hz. The overall frequency response of the tower is between 25 Hz and 20 kHz, with a sensitivity of 86 dBs at 6 ohms. Each tower weighs 72 pounds, and behind the tower there is a single pair of really nice gold-plated binding posts. The Klipsch Reference Premiere 280F has been in production since 2015 and is still widely available even though it's not currently listed on their website. The cabinet is a bass reflex design with a rear firing port. The tower has 2 8-inch woofers, a 1-inch titanium horn tweeter, has a listed frequency response of 32 Hz up to 25 kHz, a sensitivity of 98 dBs at 8 ohms, and each tower weighs just over 62 pounds. The ebony laminate on the Klipsch tower looks almost purple compared to that of the Philharmonic's deep gloss black. If I remember correctly, the Philharmonic uses 12 coats of acrylic, giving it an almost bulletproof finish. The audio system used for testing these speakers consists of the Cocktail Audio X45 with gold-plated terminals and dual ESS Sabre 32 reference DACs. The speakers are powered by Hypex-based Class D monoblock amps by a UK company called Nord. Power output is around 400 watts per channel at 8 ohm. Connecting these amps to the towers are custom Blue Jeans cables, and from the amps to the DAC will be balanced connections also custom made by Blue Jeans cables. The first piece of music I wanted to test is the track Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. I've gotten familiar with this recording after doing several comparisons between the digital high-resolution file from HD Tracks and the excellent Acoustic Sounds UHQR vinyl 45 RPM pressing. You can see that review on my channel any day now. The 24-bit 192 kHz HD Tracks edition of Kind of Blue is the highest quality version of this album currently available. The first thing you notice with this track is the analog tape hiss. It's very loud and hard to miss. After hearing it so many times, I've grown accustomed to it sounding a certain way through the Philharmonic speakers. It sounds very natural and familiar. After plugging in the Klipsch towers, I immediately noticed that the tape hiss was no longer as smooth as Miles's jazz, but had turned into a harsher static. With the Philharmonic towers, there was a sense of space, almost like you could feel the room come out of the recording. The Klipsch had a very nice sense of space too, but not as large as the BMR towers. The track Come Away With Me by Norah Jones is a staple in loudspeaker testing and overly cliche by now, but I'm doing it anyway. The first thing I noticed as I swapped towers was the breathiness of her voice. It sounded more textured and alive in the Philharmonic towers, where in the Klipsch, the overall sound had a slight veil over it. Nuances in the instruments and her voice were slightly subdued, which is surprising since the Klipsch is supposed to sound brighter. The brush on the snare drum sounded more like static on the Klipsch, while the BMR towers clearly translated the sound of a brush on a snare drum and less like a janitor sweeping a floor. This model of Klipsch tower lacks the finesse for critical listening. The Klipsch RP 280F towers are more known for being rock and roll type speakers. Loud and exciting, something to piss off your neighbors with, and that's what I'll do. For my final comparison, I'll fire up the track Watcher in the Sky by Ghost. It's not so metal as to drown out any details, but I can clearly hear all the instruments. The Klipsch towers are hooked up first, and the track does indeed sound loud and exciting. The 80s style arena rock is being thrown in your face face like a cream pie filled with nails. A few moments into the song, there is a bass guitar and a kick drum pounding in sync. You can kind of tell there is a bass guitar in there, but since it's overlapping with the kick drum, there's little distinction. The bass output of the Klipsch is heavy and boomy. Perhaps different placement in the room could help with that, but what I was hearing wasn't very tight. Switching over to the Philharmonic BMR Towers, the bass guitar was very clear, and I was detecting the picking sound of the string. The bass output was also much tighter and less muddy. There was more punch than boom. The cymbals and crashes all sounded like pure steel being hit, where with the Klipsch Towers, we were once again enjoying Carol Ann's favorite late-night TV show. Thanks to their horn-loaded tweeters, the soundstage on the Klipsch is definitely wide and imaging is on point. However, switching to the Philharmonic, things go a step further with an even larger soundstage. I recently had a guest over to experience the BMR Towers, and he asked if I had other speakers in the room. The soundstage was so wide he thought it was a multi-channel system. The Klipsch Reference Premiere 280F Towers are indeed loud and exciting speakers. They sound great on their own or match with other Klipsch speakers in an entry-level multi-channel system. I'm no stranger to Klipsch. If you follow my channel, you should know I'm a fan and already own lots of their speakers. I just wasn't prepared for the revelations when putting them face to face with a higher end product. The Philharmonic Audio BMR Towers are substantially more expensive, and they sound like it. With their balanced and detailed sound reproduction, excellent mid-range performance, and wider soundstage, the BMR Towers were not a fair comparison. But I sure am happy to own them. Maybe someday, if I ever upgrade my dedicated home theater, I will pull the Klipsch RF73 Towers and see how they fare against the Philharmonic. Until then, the only pissing off of the neighbors might be because I'm not cranking the excellent Philharmonic BMR Towers.